Welcome back, my friends, to another guest conversation. Today, I am super excited to be speaking with a very dear brother in the Dharma, clinical psychologist, speaker, Buddhist practitioner, and creator of the applied liberation psychology model for self-development, Dr. Broderick Sawyer. What's going on, Broderick? Thank you for
What's
being here.
going on, man? What's going on? Happy to be here.
Mm,
Yes,
so
yes.
happy to have you here, man. So for people who don't know you, people who don't know your work, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're spending your time, where you're spending your energy, your attention, directing your life force, and we can kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah. So currently, I am full-time in my online private practice. Um, so folks interested in that, brodericksawyer.com is an easy place to check that out. Um, Also, just working a little bit on writing. So just in my free time, I'll do a little bit of writing. I'm just trying to, in one way or another, coalesce um, both the clinical practice, writing, as well as really being able to deepen my own practice through a lot of this work. And just develop a level of consistency in egoic interruption. As I said to a client the other day, um, I need to destroy your attachment to the part of yourself that is one piece of yourself. And so working a lot with fragmentation,
Hmm.
this idea that um, egos are trying to find a way to stay connected, to survive. And so children, oftentimes, they are identified and attached to a sort of helper self or protector self or mischievous or rebel kind of self because it's getting a need met. And then they carry that into adulthood. And so this is a very interesting thing I've noticed, like attachment to ego. Um, it's not a one-stop shop. It's just what parts of my ego am I attached to? It's ruining my fucking life. You know what I'm saying?
Mm, mm,
And so
mm.
it's a beautiful process that really unfolds when I get to interact with people, and as my teacher's teacher, I would say, sort of riding uh, the ego of the other person, while I also ride my own because I'm
Mm,
not where he was.
mm.
So there's a beautiful mutuality in the healing process that it's raising energy together, so to speak. So that's really where a lot of my focus is. I feel very like honed in to these processes, and working with people with really sticky childhood trauma that's gone to other places, but they just can't integrate fully. It's about symptom management. It's not about wholeness. It's not about um, unearthing repressed energy, integrating energy. It's very hard work to pull off. It takes a lot of dedication. Um, so it's been a beauty. I could talk about this like all day long, man. But this is I love what I'm getting to do right now.
Yeah. We're so fortunate, right, to get to do the work that we do and helping other people because what you're describing is like as contemplative practitioners, we get to observe and sit with our own minds a lot. But as healer practitioners, we also get to sit with many other different minds that are very, very different from ours, and we get to observe patterns and trends and dynamics and apply them to ourselves and kind of check our own, as you said, egos. I want to kind of go down that route. Um, it's just so fortunate. Sometimes I have to pinch myself a little bit and be like, oh, we get to do this. Like this is a culturally sanctioned way to like earn a livelihood is to just show up and
Right?
help people. Like that's so amazing. Um, it's tragic that we need therapists because we systematically damage beautiful people, but it's such a beautiful privilege to be able to show up and do the work. Um, you said something really interesting that I want to kind of explore with you, right? For me, this channel isn't about just like everybody agreeing all the time. It's about sort of discourse, right? And you articulated a view that's really interesting, right? You articulated the view of like ego is the enemy and we need to destroy the ego, right?
More
But
so attachment to different
attachment
parts.
to the ego is the enemy. But I think sometimes in the work of healing, the language we use can be very violent, right? And I think like a lot of what I look at as the, the contemplative work that we're doing, the liberation work that you talk about and that I think a lot about, is about sort of identifying and essentially like uprooting or choosing how we relate to different ways in which our views have been conditioned, right? And there's a very colonial view. There's a very like aggressive, violent view that says like that thing over there, we need to go and we need to destroy it, right? And in the work that I'm doing, and I'm curious like how this shows up in your work and in your practice, like for me, my practice, I really kind of set off and had this view of like I gotta like destroy the ego, I gotta like basically dominate it, right, in some kind of way or become free of it in some way. And for myself, I'm really learning like this seems to be this process seems to be about like first and foremost like learning to be in relationship with the ego, right? Or like what even and that word means so many different things, right? So it means something different to like a Freudian psychoanalyst, it means something different to a Buddhist practitioner. So I kind of want
Yeah,
to open
yeah.
up the topic
Let's do that. Yeah,
of the
yeah,
ego and like how to be in relationship to it. What do you think? What was
yeah.
coming up for you as I was
Yeah.
sharing those
Well,
thoughts?
this is great. This is great. So, for the first thing, it's how language gets so slippery
Mm,
at a certain um, stop saying like level or like step, more dimension of practice is a better word. Um, but in terms of relationship, think about relationship as relationship with anything. You know, so if I have a relationship um, with a dog, I'm walking down the street and there's a dog and it looks friendly. Like immediately I'm in relationship with it, right? There's something happening. And so
mm,
then that it might come up to me and I might be nice. And it might, oh, and the dynamic is sort of that way. Two things come together and there's a dynamic. Right? And
mm,
something with that dog comes at me and starts to bite me, aggression may be an appropriate response. And this is
mm,
where for myself, especially
mm,
within Black liberation movements
mm,
specifically, this was a part of me that had a hard time integrating the notion of Buddhism, especially early on, because it was just this anger is the enemy,
mm,
passion and da, 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 da. And it felt very much like love your enemy, forgive and
mm,
so it
mm,
fell right into the hands, so to speak, of the um, oh, we're just nice white people. Oh, let us like this zombie sort of thing.
mm, mm,
Which
mm,
is in my mind is a level of global psychosis. It is. It's just this weird dissociative. I'm nice. I'm a helper, and then oh, what? I'm not being aggressive toward you. Da 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 da. And so this aggression, or more or less wrath, is an energy that I think really coincides or connects to death. And we get very uncomfortable, at least I do in my practice, with the notion of killing, aggression, these sorts of things. Um, and I think it's how does the energy express itself? How is it being
mm,
related with, you know? And so I didn't really, uh, I feel like for me, aggression I understood a little bit earlier on in my practice. It was just this, I don't know, black man, like, or just man, right? Patriarchy, you're more allowed to be angry and not as allowed to be sad. So it sort of went into, then I learned how to relate more to sadness. There's this just energetically heaviness, and then fear was was behind that. Um,
mm,
Very electric, very quick, very fast. And so then the ongoing relationship with those energies, I started to observe different times in sessions with clients where aggression was useful.
mm,
They would discharge aggression at me,
mm,
and I would mirror that aggression back. And here we are, two people. You're aggressive with me, I'm being aggressive with you. And maybe we're arguing about something, but we're still here, right? Our energy that's inside of us is not inherently dangerous. And so I think it's sort of this very personalized reworking of our natural relationship with the energies inside of ourselves and just relating to each moment as if it's telling you something. And I think that's been the much trickier part of my practice. It's pulled me deeper into relationships. It's pulled me deeper into getting annoyed and with people and seeing how annoyed I am and relating to that annoyance, relating to the ego that's like, and still in still in practice, still aware of all the messiness of it. Um, there's a lot to this, but I'm curious where your mind's going with this.
Totally. I'm just listening, man. I love the
Uh,
I love hearing your views. I think you're pointing to something really interesting, right? Which is not just the experiences of fear or sadness or anger or aggression, and those energies. I like that you frame it that way, right? The energy of aggression, the energy of fear, because all of those have very distinct when we like start to stop avoiding them as much and start to like taste them more, like crunch on them, munch on them. It's like, wow, like this is how fear is. Oh, this is how anger is. What you're describing is like less getting rid of fear and saying, sadness and aggression, which is a lot of how our modern mental, behavioral mental health meta system is organized, right? Is that you're anxious? Let me take that away from you. Like, are you scared? Don't be scared. You're angry? Oh, anger is very dangerous, my friend, right? Versus like, these are a form of intelligence, right? Like my anger is a
aha.
form of intelligence. It informs me about my relationship with myself and my environment. My sadness is a form of intelligence. My fear is a form of intelligence. And what you're pointing to is less, let's get rid of those because they're uncomfortable, and more, how do we change our relationship with them? I love what you said. You said, like, the energy of killing, the energy of aggression, and how that energy expresses, right? When I'm being bitten by the dog, it is not potentially skillful for me to say, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free, may all beings be. I may have intrinsic appreciation for the dog and wish no harm upon the dog, but also need to protect my bodily experience, and I may need to like push the dog away or express, be violent in response to violence that is arising towards me. I just love that train of thought because I think that view is not articulated enough in our culture. I think we have a very binary way of relating to all these things. And the other thing that's coming to my mind is like sexual energy, lust, the energy of sexual craving. And it's like, oh, either
Mm,
lean all the way into it, or like get rid
mhm,
of it versus like, nope, this is like, what's the
mhm.
texture of this? How does this impact my mind? How does this affect my physiology? How does it operate through my relationships in direct and subtle
Yes.
ways?
Yes, bro. This is especially the thread on sexual energy. I was if you like tap in with me. I was debating, am I going to talk about this? I'm like, okay, here's the
We're
opportunity.
grown-ups, dude. We talk
Um,
about sex.
sex? What?
What's that?
So I have never in my life
Never done
had
it.
sex. I would never even think about sex. Uh, bro, my
Uh,
uh, at a certain level of dimension of practice, I had gone um, back to my around my hometown to try to live. Got triggered like hell, and I think the nature of tantric practice, at least to me, is like this bell. And typically, when we're in contemplation, we are observing the inside of the bell. Maybe step outside the bell. We look at it, we touch it. Where Tantra's like, you just ring that shit, and then the ego, whoa, it's like, oh, okay, there it is. It's like very obvious. It's like you're shaking out a fucking rug, or you're like digging up like cat shit. It's like very, like talk about violence, right? It
hmm.
is
Very direct sometimes.
oh dude, I feel like I was practicing before I was completely aware of like the this I was being drawn into it in a way. And so sometimes it's to be very reassuring to learn that, oh, okay, yeah, sometimes that happens. It means you're like you're practicing, you're pulled into the energy, you can have a relationship with it. Um, so when it got triggered, went back to Louisville, Kentucky. It's like, whoa, I just saw a lot of shit, like clear as day. Also included a few smaller psilocybin trips as well. We had like a once every 2 month kind of cadence, nothing half a hero, um, just to sort of further sort of get underneath the ego, make it easier for the awareness to like make direct contact. So then I go back to Louisville, and there was a lot of lust for me. There was a lot of lusting, a lot of wanting, a lot of releasing, And then at a certain day, I had pleasured myself. And then I was like, after I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What are we doing here? Why? And then I did a couple months where I was like not releasing, like not really by choice. So this was an interesting thing. I really learned, I feel, about the practice of celibacy and how it can be confused and distorted. It's not like a forcing yourself to. It's relating to the body as an energetic system, and then really following its intuitive instincts, which also includes spiritual practice as an instinct I've started to feel. Um, it's in everyone once we start to make that contact. And so for first time trying to hold my seed, 2 months, I found you either work out a shit ton, you get really, this is just what I know so far. Work out a bunch, get really pissed off a little bit too much, like rage just becomes a problem at a certain point. You got to pull that energy into the heart center. And it's essentially like this plugging, plugging like a spout, right? All the energy rises and then pushes through blockages in the chakra system. Essentially, is how I experienced it. So I did 2 months, and then I went a year and a half. And when I was around women in particular, because I couldn't, I had every time I had a thought, a lustful thought or whatever, I would pull the mind away from it and I would try to pull it towards something else. Um, and so sometimes this was just my own um, just awareness. It really increases perception, especially emotional perception. So there's more intensity, there's more energy. If you have a problem or something in life, it will see that problem and sort of like almost like animate you and force you to go fix that problem. A very powerful thing. Um, but the ultimate thing I learned, especially after that, to know how to have sex, you first got to know how to not have sex. And
Hmm.
the level of lust and worship and reverence, it started to become very apparent to me when I was having sex with my partner, who I'm currently with. I still practice just non-release in that way. That was something I had to really learn to do in a responsible way. Um, but the appreciation of someone experiencing being loved in a physical expression sort of way, it became um, again the pleasure in the joy in feeling a level of release in your partner feels like a release to me in the heart. And this moving the energy into my heart space with this person, and then being able to hold on to that energy and then use it, with my clients, the endurance, the mental focus, all of the worship. And so in a way, I'm now really practicing tantra in a way with clients, like not sexually, obviously, but enjoying their own relief, and participating in that relief. You know, it's very, very powerful, um, very energetic, but it also does include uh, leaving enough space for energy to combust without getting too thin. Similar to talking retention, right? So typically that has to do with central channel, typically. A year and a half, bro. It was just like, and I was like, oh, it was like crying out like real trauma, bro, crying out some real traumas. Like sometimes, like, why, dad? Oh, just like rolling around with it, man. But in a similar way, leaving enough space for emotions like sadness, same sort of thing, just working with energy. If it just breaks down to thermodynamics on a certain level. If you don't leave enough space for sadness, it gets really, in my opinion, it turns into shame. It's like this squeezing, the energy gets so dense, that it just starts to implode on itself, so to speak. But then when we open it too much and it becomes all diffuse, then it's kind of like we're numb. Like we can't exactly feel or contact the energy. So I think for everyone, really finding the level of spaciousness that allows energy to be workable in one way or another, I think is one of the biggest takeaways from tantric practice, from Buddhist practice. It's just a lot about energy, touching, feeling. Also, the sense of like we have time, and once you start to get to that place, then it becomes, oh, okay, all right, so okay, well, interesting. Let's just hang out in this one
Mm.
for a while, experiment, take some risks here and there, like, and then you can afford to make mistakes. So there's almost this convergence for me with the contemplation and the energetic work, you know. And I'll forget every once in a while, get mad at my partner. Oh, it's like, don't you get mad, bro. You said this, and then she got mad. Then you got your feelings hurt, and now you're mad? Well, hold on a second. What was the chain here? That sort
Mm.
of ongoing awareness all the time is a pain in my fucking ass. But it will always tune me into what the sequence of things is, which is a very powerful tool with clients. It's so powerful to be able to help place them in time and space. It's a very grounding thing in my own view, especially on suffering. Suffering is just pain with confusion. Once you're no longer confused and you can contact the pain, when someone can identify the source, the adaptive, if you're scared, what are you? The first time I was, bro, I was struggle bussing, bro, struggle bussing financially. It was like I needed it. It was during my period of celibacy. It was like the universe was like, oh yeah, you want to like a growth chamber real quick? Here you go. I'm like, oh, so I'm sitting on my couch, stone cold sober, after eating spaghetti with no Parmesan cheese, mind you. I was like skimping on it, man. And I remember feeling authentically afraid for the first time.
Mm.
And I used a particular just egoic disruption technique, I'll call it, courtesy of Ramana Maharshi. Who is it who's afraid? Right? So this snap of the mind, sort of for listeners, I guess it's like throwing a spear into a bike spoke. It's gonna fall off the bike. Um, Dropped into my body immediately, and I felt this just like tickle, so to speak. And I was like, "Ooh!" Is and I giggled a little bit just at the experience of the energy. And I said, like, "Wow, I'm really scared shitless." Here struggling with cash, really worried. And then it became, okay, how do I improve my situation here? Okay, well, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. So the fear almost repurposing itself into energy, into action.
Mm.
So it's really serving this one, right? It's this experience of, energy or God, whatever you want to call it, within me. servicing what needs to happen. And so everyone has these basic instincts, which are energies within them. But the spaciousness, the attachment to not being afraid or not being angry or being something, trying to distort what is actually in us, it dampens our own intelligence. It dampens our ability to actually. Everyone wants to talk about transmutation and this and that. Well, you have to feel all that shit first. You
Mm.
have to be in relationship with it for real. Um, and this is where energetically the work is still for me, which is attempting relationship. Like being holding it wrong, dropping it. Oh fuck, and all right, pick that up. Whoops. It's a lot of whoopsie daisies, man. A lot of whoa, my goodness, which just gets me further and further out of this duality of you made a mistake, you know, and it's a beautiful thing.
There's so much that you just shared, right? Like there's so much to in me, I felt like I was sort of on a journey of like imagine it's like, oh, and then that part, and then oh, that part of human experience. And like first first of all, I just felt like a lot of gratitude for you being, essentially saying like, hey, like I'm a sexual being. And this is some aspects of my sexual experience, right? Because I think that we denigrate the truth of our sexual identity, both in spiritual environments, right? It's like you could either be a spiritual person or you can be a sexual person. You can't really be both, right? Or in
Yeah.
clinical environments too, right? Even in something like I'm trained in couples therapy and I see couples, and a lot of the trainings that I've done and the learning, it's like doesn't talk about sex.
Yeah. Wait, it doesn't talk about it in the
And
in the
and I'm
trainings?
just like, okay, we're talking about like intimacy and communication, and we're
Mm,
talking about all these
mm,
other things. But I think what it is, I mean, some trainings do, right? Like some modalities
yeah.
specifically center around like sex positive couples therapy.
Yeah.
But some of the environments I've been in, it's like what I
Yeah.
notice or what I feel is this sort of like cultural attitude towards sex that is showing up in the space, right? And I kind of want to bracket, if that's okay with you, the language of Tantra specifically, because for
So,
viewers, like there's so many different connotations with that, right? And there's so many different ways to misunderstand it. And Tantra kind of gets hypersexualized, and it's sort of like to stay. That's like a whole. Maybe you and I do like a like an 8 part
bro, yeah.
series or
Right.
workshop one day talking about Tantra specifically, which I ultimately like. I'm a tantric practitioner in the sense of being a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, but ultimately don't know that much about. And so I think a lot of people in our culture really like talk about it without really knowing much about it. And so there's a lot of misconception that can happen, right? And so I just kind of want to bracket that in the context of the conversation that we're having. But you said so many different things that I think are important to reflect back. I'm kind of taking notes and I'm looking at it. It's like, one of the things that drew my attention was I think the ways in which we confuse sexuality with sensuality, right? Like this experience of being a sensual being. I am in sensual, you and I are in sensual relationship
That's what
right
I was
now.
thinking. That's what I was
Contracting
thinking.
through the
Yeah.
senses, right? Anybody who's watching
Hmm.
this is in sensual
Hmm.
relationship. If you give somebody a hug, if you look at somebody across the street, right? If you listen to another person's words, you're in sensual relationship with them, right? And I think sometimes there's this like big area, it's kind of this big knot of like how we relate to sexual energy and sensual energy. And one of the things that you said that I thought was most important was that you said like let's see what happens when I begin to intentionally bring awareness to this kind of energy in particular, right? Like all energies, but like the sexual energy in particular. What happens when I bring attention to it? And it made me think about a dear friend of mine, Chris, who I'll have on the show also at some point, who's a very serious meditator and practitioner, and we were talking about porn use, right? Which is pretty much ubiquitous culturally, but especially among males. Like, as soon as a man walks into my office, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what's this guy's relationship with porn? Because if we can get to the point where I feel safe enough talking about it, and it's this thing where like everybody's doing it and nobody's talking about it, right? Like lawyers, doctors, bakers, yogis, not you, like everybody's kind of engaging with this. It's almost this sort of like shadow aspect of our repressed, sexualized world. And then it shows up if you look
Yeah,
at the
dude.
internet, it's like this
I love
huge
that.
realm of it. But we
Yeah.
were talking about it, and I basically said, like I think I have a porn problem. Like when I don't use it, I get really angry. And you know what Chris said? He said something that so stuck with me that I come back to it over and over and over again. He said, "No, dude, like you don't have a porn problem. You have an anger problem, and your porn use covers it over." And what you described was the ways in which we use methods, right? Like sex can be used to deepen feeling, to deepen communication, to deepen relationship, or it can be used to come out of relationship or to numb or to feel less, right? And it's less about the practice itself, the behavior itself, and it's more about like what's the context? What's the internal context? What's the relational context in which this is taking place? And what you're describing is like when I intentionally and contextually sounds like life also sometimes puts us through these. I loved how you said
Right.
these like containers for growth. You're like, God, please give me growth. And they're like,
Yeah,
all
and they're
right,
like,
well, yeah,
oh yeah, I'm
it's
gonna
okay,
backhand
baby.
you.
Like, you want to
Yeah.
grow?
Oh,
Like,
wait, wait, wait,
I'll teach you patience. Like, okay. And what happens is you said, like, when I
wait.
began to relate differently to these ways I have of habitually numbing myself or
Mhm.
distracting myself or coming out of myself, I was able to feel for the first
Yeah.
time. Oof. And I felt that, man. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like, oh, I was really able to feel my fear. I was really able to feel my sadness, right? And as two humans living in male bodies, we are socialized so that it is acceptable. It's not preferable, but it's acceptable for us to be angry, right? It's acceptable for us to be a servant, but like for us to be like sad or despondent or confused or like listless, like all of those are actually not socially sanctioned states a man can be in, which puts us in a very confined spectrum of what our acceptable, socially acceptable emotional experience can be, right? And I was just thinking about all the ways in which like patriarchy shows in this, heteronormativity shows up in this, so many different ways that we're conditioned and trained to relate to ourselves and relate to sexuality. Um, and what I was appreciating was that you sort of offer an inquiry about like what actually happens when we begin to be more intentional about these energies that are going to be a part of the human experience, whether we like them or not. And if we don't accept them and embody them and come in relationship with them, what happens is you have a couple of choices. You can either dissociate from them, you can sublimate, and they show up in all sorts of. I love how you said, like, this idea of like, what happens if sadness doesn't have enough space to exist? It becomes shame. It becomes something different, right? And the image that came to my mind was like, if I have, 100 molecules of water in a cup, and I put them in a bathtub, they have a lot more room to play. There's a lot more possibility there. But if I take these 100 molecules of water and I put them inside a container the size of the head of a needle, then that
Yeah.
creates pressure. That creates a sense of like,
Yeah.
oh, there's not as much room to move, right? And so much of our
Mm-hmm.
practice I find is like, how do I set up my external environment and develop these systems and these methodologies so that I can relate to my internal environment without that like instinctive leaning and now I need to destroy this. Now I need to get rid of this. Or now I need to cling to this. Now I need to hold on to this because if it doesn't, I'm not going to be okay. Like, and what happens when we give space for our energies to flow and it becomes a very different way of relating to our internal environment and it manifests very differently in our interpersonal interactions, right?
Oh man, I love this. Mm. I love the part about external environment. This is very interesting. I think it's a great thread here to pull on that gets underneath individualism
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
practitioners, right? There are a couple of things here. This is actually shit. Shout out to Predator Badlands for this recent insight, I think, about the male ego in
Mm.
particular, and masculinity, and um, what bravery really is. And so
Mm.
I won't spoil the ending or anything for listeners, but it is a great illustration of what strength really is. And without the capacity, in my experience, to connect with the energy of sadness, courage, and bravery is not possible. Feeling sad for potential outcomes that could happen to you, to other people, right? Or things that have happened that you want to prevent from happening again, that involves integrating the notion of sadness or disappointment, you know, loss. We can't really risk it all unless we really connect with the energy um, of that loss, of that potential. And this is where, in my experience, bravery, courage really exists. Um, it's so that direct. We hear have a lot of men, especially young men, who want to be brave. They want to be big. They want to be this. They want to be bad that. But ultimately, the thing that makes you quote unquote biggest um, is your capacity really for care. You know, really for care and action. And the internal environment is one aspect of this, right? But the external environment in particular, setting up our life situation in such a way where energy has room to express itself fully. So if we have a porn addiction problem, which I think many men have had, I have had as well, um, energy is trying to express itself in one way or another. We don't know where it's really trying to go until we stop expelling it, right? In one way or another, right? Whether that's overeating, whether that's drinking, whatever it is, right? When you feel the urge and then you stop and you don't do it, then you'll find out where, okay, what's the problem here? Oh, I start to get angry, right? To your point, your friend Chris, right? Oh, oh shit, I get really angry. Oh, no, I don't want to have that problem. So I'm just going to continue using porn, right? But then it just delays the development of the organism, or you can call it spiritual practice, whatever you want to call it, right? But the natural development of these things does involve working with what's inside of these things. You know, no dog like suppresses its bark. You know, it works it out. It barks. That's just what it does. It explores. It makes mistakes. Um, but when we think about the individual practice, the individual part of our practice, it is quite isolating, and there is an isolating aspect to it, sure. And there's also the relational environment. And this is one of the biggest things that I am really picking up on with my clients, especially with trauma. It is, can I be in relationship with people who allow the totality of my being without trying to force me, gaslight me, coerce me, selectively mirror me in a way that gets me to be the way that they need me to be to regulate their own ego, to not trigger their own sense of, oh, that's not right, or this and that. So this is more than just like not being judgmental. I find this to be a highly subconscious process, because if someone is identified with any real part of their ego and they don't have a just a practice of observing projection. I won't call it anything specific, like just the capacity that I can project things, you know, that are coming from in me. You know, that basic knowledge. If we had K through 12 education on just that mechanic, I think we'd be a lot better off. But a lot
Mm,
of people don't have it. So
dude,
they're walking around,
preach,
yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. And so they're walking around thinking their mind is external, right? And then thinking sometimes, you know, relating to the external world as if that's not their mind, right? Like it's very confusing. And so a lot of what my clients get wrapped up in is, well, a lot of people get up in is, oh, should I doubt my experience to stay in relationship to people? You know, I have to doubt my experience in order to stay securely attached, right? So now fragmentation, right, or the
Mm,
idea that I'm going to play this part so that I stay securely attached becomes just survival. And people, they grow up in these environments where their parents or environment is forcing them to wear a certain mask. They act that mask out because they're surviving. Their nervous system registers it as survivals, and then they just keep doing that. That's what
survival
the
is good.
so
That's
yeah,
basically survival
that's it.
good,
That's it.
but not survival bad. That's how the nervous
Yeah,
system operates. Hmm?
big bang. That's yeah, and that level of simplicity makes fragmentation and fragmented relating styles so common, so commonplace. And so this idea of
Mm,
external environments that facilitate a deepening of awareness, a deepening of presence within myself,
mm,
that's right there is one of, I think, at least for me, one of the most like fucking interesting, triggering, deep, funny and ironic, agitating, um, man, relationships bring that shit up in you. Like when
mm,
I observed myself last night. She's gonna watch this too. I observed myself last night. She's a little sick to my partner. She's a little like just cold, a little agitated. She said something to me that was just reflecting her own agitation, right? And then I felt it like, oh, I sort of felt that. And then I observed myself going into a sort of like performer part, right? So then I was like, try to make her laugh for a couple moments. And I sort of caught myself. I was like, oh my God, my mind sort of blown. And sometimes, have these moments where something will happen. And I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go. I gotta go. Down all this stuff. I get back to my place. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm just able to peel back the layers of that performer part,
mm,
right? And that power of being aware in relationship and seeing the interaction effects. She's in this state. I can feel that state. And then I'm sort of owning the sort of, oh, you feel bad? I must play the part of making you feel good,
mm,
or I'm dysregulated.
mm, mm. I must
This,
try to
this,
regulate you so that I can regulate myself, right?
yes,
So widespread.
yes. And it's so, bro, it's so, I used to hate when Ram Dass would say this, but now I agree. It's delicious. It's delicious. It is amazing. It is it is it is
Exquisite.
so
Mm,
cool to be able to observe human nature as it's happening
yeah.
without feeling a sense of shame, without feeling a sense that I needed to be something different. And also seeing that the protector part, the performing part, whatever, like, I'll make people laugh. So it's not bad. It's just
Yeah.
not a tool
Yeah.
for regulation all the time. Maybe it's not the best one, or maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. And this is the sort of journey without goal nature of practice and working with our relationships to see which parts of us become activated under which conditions. Then, once we start to get an understanding of what qualities are amplified or dampened, and all in between, in our life situation, relationships, within what we choose to talk about or what we choose to do in those relationships. Like, I don't know, talk to one person about sadness and they don't integrate sadness well. And then I'm going to have a dampened experience, maybe, or they're going to project their own relationship with sadness onto me when I talk about sadness. But if I talk to them about something else, like liberation or this or that, maybe it goes different. So in that way, if you engage in life on a certain angle, then just that little tweak of an angle will lead to a completely different dynamic.
Mm,
And that level of, I won't call it control. I would maybe capacity for exploration, capacity for feeling the different shades to things or dimensions to things. Just when we lean subtly to the left, or place that word before that one, or like, wait a second here, pause, let them go, and then go. Now something drastically different is going to happen
mm,
in us and in the situation. And so this external environment, um, I do feel that a lot of these are places for real exploration,
mm,
real play, uh, and the lack of relational capacity, I think, really drives a lot of suffering, if not all suffering. I'm beginning to get to this point where shame tolerance and shame intolerance is the only thing that drives quote unquote pathology.
Ooh,
Because, yeah, yeah,
sound
because,
bite.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You can't, yeah, because you
I love that,
can't
man.
be,
I could get behind that.
yeah, all right, because you can't be curious if you don't have shame tolerance. Because to be curious is to be open to whatever the fuck is going to happen. Oh, what's this? You might learn something about yourself that you didn't want to know, and then you'll feel bad. Or in relationship, especially, like we're co-regulatory beings, right?
Mm,
Our sense of self develops through relationships.
mm,
So if your sense of self develops from relationships, your co-regulators, all of our evolutionary design, okay, so that's the only thing we should fucking be talking about, within mental health
mm,
space. That's the only thing. And,
right.
and so when I can't be curious, oh, hey, mom, why did you do this? Oh, like that's sort of
Never mind.
shrinking. Never mind. Yep, yep. I'm a helper self. I'm a performer self. Here, let me help you laugh, right?
Yeah.
And then I see
Or
her
I'm an
laugh.
idiot.
Yeah,
Or I'm an idiot,
yeah.
right? Mom must know. God, that was dumb, right? Let me just
Yes,
suppress that part of me.
that's right. And that's right. And then the performing parts doesn't actually connect us because we can't be curious, mutually discovering uh, each other's insides, really. Um, just everyone externalizing, really, at the end of the day, everyone externalizing. I mean, my mom, right, under the pressure of capitalism, right, under the pressure of what I'll call like low grade blue collar trauma.
Yeah.
It's like you're not broke all the
But you're
way,
damn near
but you're
close to it
also
a
not
lot of the time.
rich. And it's like floating in between, I think creates a special level of distress
Stress.
that
Yeah.
we don't really talk about. It's very subtle. It's like,
Yeah.
can I get over the hump? Am I going to drop? It's like,
Totally.
and it really doesn't allow people to connect. But that shame tolerance, man, I think that's really one of the biggest things, especially when I work with more narcissistically oriented people. It's only really about that, an inflated ego
Interesting.
to defend against that. And so just peeling back the layers of accountability within themselves and also accepting their ego,
Mm,
you know, and accepting their defense
mm,
as righteous. You suffered. There's something in there that happened to you, or some things that happened to you, or where you were related to. So this ego that you have is doing exactly what any ego would do in this particular situation. And so that the non-ownership of the ego's projections and just being there anyway
mm.
begins to communicate to the nervous system that, hey, you can cut out the middleman. You know that, right?
Mm.
You don't have
The
to relate
protector. Yeah.
through,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to relate through this
Yeah.
thing.
We can be here as we
Um,
are. Mm.
yeah, yeah. And that's puts pressure on my own self-compassion practice. I
Yeah.
have to have a lot of shame tolerance
Yeah.
to hold that. Um, so yeah, a lot here, but yeah, yeah.
Man, so rich, so rich. That's why every person I've had on the show so far, I already am sort of like pre-inviting them to the next round of conversations because it's so rich the topics that we're unpacking, and I feel like it's interesting, right? We're like an hour in, but it feels like we're just warming up, right? Like we're just kind of starting to open and kind of unpack things. And you said some things that I want to reflect back is so important. You described the ways in which essentially we feel relationally unsafe as children, where there's an inherent sort of intrinsic systemic power imbalance that happens. And so we learn to perform self rather than being ourselves, right? And then there's another thing that happens, which is so problematic, which is not only do we start to perform self, but then we actually start to become identified with our performed self. And so now we're no longer living as ourselves, we're living as the performative parts of us, identified with the performative parts of us that learned to perform in order to stay safe. And then somebody comes into our office, or we ourselves, like healers, are also people who suffer and also need therapists, right? Like we ourselves, we all begin to go, like, something feels off. Why do I not feel like myself? Everything's right. All the pieces are arranged in my life. My relationship from the outside, everything looks great. Everything's good. If I'm fortunate to not live with sort of overt trauma and difficulty in my life, but still something feels off. And what is that? It's because you're living in this performed version of yourself, which is sort of hollow, right? And out of alignment with how you actually feel yourself to be. And you talked about
Very sad.
it's very sad, right? And that's the sort for me,
Yeah.
that's that being able to tap into that sadness is the ground of compassion. It's like,
Yeah.
ooh, I actually have to feel how sad this is. Um,
Yeah.
and you said something that really stopped me in my tracks, man. You said, like, for men in particular, what makes you the biggest is your capacity for care. What makes you the biggest is your capacity for care. I'm going to take that and put it on shirts, and I want to fly it on slogans, on airplanes, and I want to have it be the first thing you see when you walk into a grocery store for everyone, right? Not just for men, but because men are so not socialized, I think, in that way. And in
They're
fact,
not.
are sort of like ridiculed or attacked, like, oh, you're sort of like this sensitive, like you care, like aren't you used to just be this like macho, like take what you want for yourself. That's what a man does, versus like what you articulated is like the opposite
Yeah.
view of that, right? No, what makes us big, what makes us strong. There's nothing wrong with being big and strong. We're like, oh, men, too big and strong. So no,
Yeah.
no. It's like, but what does it mean to be
Uh-huh.
big and strong? It's like being big and
Yeah.
strong means showing up for the people in your life with attunement, with a regulated nervous system, with clarity, with kindness. Which brings me to something that you were circling around, which is like what I was hearing you saying is that the essence of practice is not how many hours you can sit in the lotus posture. It's not the crazy experiences internally that you can have in visualizations. The essence of practice is relationship. The essence of practice is how do you show up day in and day out with the truth of your shortcomings, with the truth of the beautiful aspects of your identity and your personality, with your messiness, in order
Mhm.
to relate in a skillful way with
Yeah.
yourself and with the
Yeah.
people around you, right? Like that's the metric of success for practice. I don't care how many retreats you've been on. That's nice. You've sat
Right?
300 million retreats, good. But like, are you treating
Yeah.
the people around you kindly?
Facts.
You know, are
Facts.
you treating your body
Yeah.
kindly? Are you getting good sleep? Are you doing things that nourish and elevate and support and care for you and the relational environment that you're embedded in?
Yeah. And that nakedness, man, I felt it as you just said it. Right? Are you doing the things that you need to do? And in the flash of my mind was like all this shit that I'm like observing myself not do that I need to do, but I'm still feeling that stuckness. And I think that compassion piece, working working with you as you are now and still paying attention equally to everything,
Mm.
everything, everything. I understand why people are hungry to go to retreats and be attached to the experiences and all these different spiritual sedatives in a way, sort of bypassing a bit. Um, I get it because sitting with my stuff and sitting with the stuff of others, and it's tough. It's tough. And that sadness aspect, I think the ability to sit with the sadness also relates to my capacity to see myself clearly, you know, and actually appreciate, yes, bro, you're stuck around this,
Yes.
likely because of this pain that you still have and you're holding and you're working with. And guess what? You're doing your best. And there's something
Radical
about,
blamelessness. I see.
yes, bro.
I follow your work, man. I'm
Yes,
tracking.
bro. Yes,
Radical
bro. Yes,
blamelessness.
bro.
You're not at
Yes,
fault
bro.
for the way you are, but you
That's
are
right. That's
responsible
right.
for the way you cultivate yourself.
That's it. That's it. That's it. The cultivation. I like that word. The cultivation, man. It's you know, this first started with a client I had in 2018, 19, but it's very relevant each and every day. I woke up and just, just having a malaise just in my head, just like, this isn't right. Oh, I don't feel how I want to feel. Uh, and what flashed in my mind was my client I had that morning. A lot of trauma, sort of BPD like traits, but I wasn't gonna diagnose it. I was like, let me try to treat the trauma first, and then maybe the traits will go away. You know,
And this for
um,
listeners is a borderline personality disorder. That's a whole other different conversation that you and I can, or have at some point. But it's
that's a
essentially
good
a
one.
very stigmatizing way of outlining certain interpersonal difficulties
Yeah.
that become
Yeah.
very entrenched in a person's way of operating, right? So just to clarify, continue.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there in my stuff, just waking up like, and I had this thought of like, you know who doesn't have time for you to indulge in your own experience right now? This person.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's something about that, dude. It like that's what moment to moment kills the ego for me. Kills, puts it aside, puts to
Pacifies.
sleep for a little bit. There you go. Yeah. It's right there. I get I notice it most when I'm with my like evening clients, like and I'm tired. And
Hmm.
I'm then just there's this they don't have fucking time. They don't have time.
For
And
your own
heroism,
ego games, for your own
yeah,
mind games. Yeah, yeah.
no, they don't. And this there are a lot of archetypes with this. You know, I love Iron Man, Tony Stark's Iron Man. It's just like the perfect back and forth with the male ego. Look at me. Look at my stuff. Look at how fucking smart and brilliant I am. Look at my tower, New York. Ha ha. And then all of a sudden a nuke is coming to New York City and he's like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to like maybe die right now.
The ego
And the
becomes
way,
confronted with its limitations.
yes, repeatedly with this guy, dude, repeatedly with this guy.
But with all of
Eh,
us,
Yeah, yeah. And this like I love that narrative so much. Especially I don't want to like spoil it for listeners, but the ultimate like I could just not worry about this and live a life of peace. And his wife looks at him and says, like, you know you can't do that. He's like, fuck. You know? And it's like frustration. See it in the Grinch movie too, the Jim Carrey Grinch movie. Actually, this is a little known little bodhisattva tidbit when his heart grew 12 times. And he's like, oh, you know, very accurate.
mm,
And
mm,
he sees Cindy Lou Who on the little Christmas up on the top of the mountain. And he's like, what are you doing up there? And he like yells. He's like frustrated with her, like, why are you taking these risks? He fucking cares, and it's painful. And he says one line I'll never forget. He goes, bleeding hearts of the world unite. And there's this, like, I'm going to have to do this. I'm here. I am witnessing. I have the ability. This is going to happen. And there's this freedom, this letting go for him in that particular process where they're riding down the mountain and she's like, we're going to crash. And he's like, maybe, but there'll be no sad faces on Christmas. And then there's this, yeah, dude, there's
that's
this
a bodhisattva
joy.
attitude in a nutshell, right? It's like we're gonna crash,
It is.
like maybe, but there will be no sad
Yeah,
faces. Like,
that's it. That's it. And it's a bit of a universal journey, I think, for a lot of people, but the care looks different depending on just well, one is the Tibetan Buddhist Zerchpa, I believe it was. Um, he says you must match your capacity and your conduct. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche taught Pema Chodron and taught my teacher. And so I've just like dig into a lot of his books, a lot, very prolific, controversial, sure, and a lot of wisdom within that. And I was loved reading the little exchanges that he has with students. I would fucking love. I love that back and forth. It's always like, but what? How do I know? How do I know? How do I know? What do I? I mean, he's just like, fucking relax, you know. And so he goes, don't worry. If you're not doing enough, the floor will raise.
hmm.
If you're doing the most, you bump your head.
Mm, yep, that's right.
Yeah. Yes.
Uh, the thing that you said, which is also actually I released another conversation today with my dear friend and colleague Claire Maccabee, and they point out how real compassion hurts. That's why we talk about compassion. We think about compassion as this like grand, inspiring, I'm a compassionate, and then everything will be okay. But it's like the reality is, I think more of us don't do that, don't give rise to compassion and sort of work on our own armoring and defenses because real compassion, real caring is very painful, right? And I remember for myself having this realization a few years ago that I can make a choice, right? Like I can either be in relationship and experience the suffering of loss that comes with being attached and devoting attention and energy towards beings that I'm in relationship with,
Mm,
or I can insulate myself from that kind of pain and isolate, which I think is what a lot of people, a lot of men are taught is like, don't be in a relationship. That's too painful. Or that's what they learn throughout their life, right? And so like, oh, so I'm going to isolate. I'm going to keep my pain to myself. I'm going to keep my flaws to myself. I'm going to keep my excitement and the things that I'm happy about to myself. Um, which seems to protect us from that pain of loss or the possible pain of loss, but in reality totally isolates us from ourselves and from our life and from people in our life, right? And these, I still go back to what you talked about, like the dogs barking, right? And so my partner is a very good dog trainer. And so I got into learning about dog training quite
mm,
in depth, and it taught me a lot about training humans, actually, because if you want to train your dog, you got to train the trainer. That's how you do it, actually. Um, and that actually we as a culture say, oh, a dog that barks is a dangerous dog. That's a no good dog, right? When in
mm,
reality, actually, a dog that barks is a much better communicator. A dog that barks is letting you know, don't get close. I feel uncomfortable right now. Don't get close. I feel
mm,
unsafe right now. But the dogs that cause harm are the dogs that don't bark because then there's no communication. And then I'm being pressured and I'm
mm.
being pressured and I'm unsafe and I'm unsafe. And then I snap and then I bite you, right? And we also don't know how to listen to the barks of dogs. It's like, oh, the dog is barking. Treat it like a little piece of furniture versus like, ooh, what are you communicating to me right now? You're letting me know something about your experience. You feel unsafe right now. What is it that you're needing to feel safer, right?
I like this, man. This brings me this brings me into the importance of the Hinayana dimension practice, which is really, in a nutshell, sitting and being aware and refining our attention and how important that process is really throughout um, any whether we're in tantric deity visualization or we're having these different experiences where we're bathing in bodhicitta, uh, if you're not there for it, if you're not attending to it, if the awareness is not ongoing, then your practice doesn't have a thread. It doesn't have
Doesn't have legs.
a,
It's got nothing to
it,
hold.
yeah, it's not, yeah, hold that right there. And that for me really has helped develop real self-compassion, like real self-compassion and real appreciation for being able to perceive
Hmm.
teachings.
Hmm.
You can't like that. There's a sacredness to it. In New York, when me and you were in New York, and this is hilarious. This is funny. Um,
Take us down memory
watching,
lane, dude.
yeah. Oh, bro, me and you were at the psychedelic conference. We're watching this speaker, right?
Yeah.
He's a Western white guy, scientist, academic, talking about psychedelics. I'm fucking triggered. I'm at that time, I'm pissed off with academia, I'm pissed off at white people, whatever. And this was so funny. You're gonna like this. So then we're sitting there watching, and I'm like, this and that, and da 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 da. And then you're like, no, Broderick. When I'm listening, I just try to just sit back and indulge in it and listen. And a part of me was like, oh, well, I'm not gonna like talk shit to your face, but
Fuck
this
you.
fucking guy, this fucking guy. No, man, I'm gonna keep judging in my head, da 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 da. And then after that, yeah, yeah. And so the ongoing thread,
Hmm.
then later on, a couple days pass, and I'm thinking to myself, like, yo, Esteban really cared enough to say that to me at a time where my reaction was the opposite. It's like, wow, wow. And Sangha to me is really borrowing strength from each other, with each other. The strength for me to even like lean into my ego a bit and say, this fucking guy. There's a boldness to
Mm.
me that's still being expressed, even though it's more constricted.
And a
And there's
trueness, a trueness.
yeah, yes, yes, yes,
It's true.
and yeah, and you were, man, just being in that relationship and then having the thread of awareness to see why I got triggered, appreciating you as a part of my saga, right? Appreciating how I can maybe learn to listen in a new way. And then in later situations, seeing when I'm not listening, right? And then being able to pull different parts of experience together and really be able to take advantage of everything that we've experienced, so to speak. Because there's always this game with me trying to like mentally hold on to things as opposed to fully tending. If you fully
Mm.
attend, you integrate them on the spot. There's nothing to remember or conceptualize. You remember because you were there. And this uh, thread through Hinayana sitting practice, Mahayana, Bodhisattva, are you ready to get your savior complex to really wrapped up and then hit later when
Yeah.
you move into Vajrayana.
There's no
Move
room
hit
for that.
later.
Yeah, there's no room
That's
for
right.
that.
Yeah, yeah. It starts to squeeze it out. But the awareness and the attention aspect being more important in Tantra is like this getting so fucking close to like just
Pure experience. Yeah. Pure
experience.
knowledge.
Then it's like, no, look closer.
Yeah.
And then get triggered. And then
Mm.
I'm like,
Mm.
oh, this,
Mm.
oh, nothing
Mm.
is real, but this thing is definitely real. And it's like, da, da, da. But you just said in Mahayana that everything's empty. I was like, fuck. Yeah,
Dude,
yeah, yeah.
I love that you just told that story, man. I'm so grateful, yeah, for the time we've shared together. And also like, I just kind of got this sense of like, love and care is a gift that keeps on giving, right? Because you give it in the moment. It's received how you receive how love is given and how love is received could be two very different things, right? But here we are years later, maybe what, like 6 or 7 years later, and now you've just given me a gift again of like awareness of like my own ignorance in those moments, right? Of like,
Uh,
oh, I see. Yes, Broderick is in a different body. Broderick has had a different experience and is relating to this experience in a different way, right? And now Broderick is caringly let me know what his experience was and what the interiority of that was. And now I get to now Sangha, I push into you and lean in. Now you push in and lean in against me, right? And sometimes it's like soft and gentle, sometimes it's like stern and supportive, but it always seems to like feed back into itself, right? Feed back into this connection. And
yeah.
it's like we're supporting each other. I feel in you and I, but in the broadest sense, like Sangha community helps us like what exactly as you said, like show up attend to all of it, which is where this, I want to do a whole conversation where we talk about your idea that all pathology stems back to shame, right? Because
Mhm.
if we imagine exploring our own internal environment as like, you know, exploring this jungle or exploring this forest, and every time you run into something that you don't like, oh, you're not going to explore much of the forest. You're going to turn back very quickly. And so practice is what allows us to say, like, and this part too, and this part too. This is a beautiful waterfall, and there's a snake eating a baby lemur. That's all in the forest. Okay, so this is this part of sublime beauty, and here's this part, decaying carcasses. Oh, and there's like a wildfire, like all of these different aspects of ourselves when we can come into relationship to them and attend to them and show up for them. What becomes possible is real relationship. We can begin to relate to one another from a place of true connection rather than performing around one another. I'm going to perform for Broderick, and Broderick's going to perform for me, and we're all going to perform quietly together versus sort of like learning to cut through that a little bit and be more honest with one another, but more honest with ourselves. Like, this is what I carry in myself. These are all the different aspects of myself, and how shame, the ways in which we learn because of our mostly social environment. I would be curious what your thought is on that, but mostly because of our social environment, what parts of us are okay and what parts of us are
Mhm.
not okay, and how that forces us to like narrow, 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 confine our experience, and then how our bodies and our minds are actually incredibly compassionate because what they start to say is like, hey, something's wrong.
Yeah,
I need to feel
yeah,
more, I don't fit in this. I need to grow my experience of myself in order to be able to feel like those water molecules, right? Like I have space. I have space to be myself in this world. I can understand the ways in which this world is trying to confine me, but I can do that through the lens of compassion.
Compassion is a level of spaciousness
Hmm.
with that, and what compassion is what is for me, give people a shame, a shame teaser, I guess. Shame and accountability are two sides of one coin.
Hmm.
Um, when we feel like we did something bad or we're not doing something, there is a level of disappointment related to our own unskillful action or conduct. But there's always
That's right.
awareness, there's always the attention that cuts through it. So if you know where you misstepped, you have an opportunity to change today, to change things today. And bro, this is my own shit coming. Like there's so many years where you just, especially, we're being a product of a tyrannic environment, which we can say just the US is, to
Yeah.
be able to have that opportunity to change is a hopeful situation, is an uplifting possibility. Uh, and I didn't really understand a lot of what the Buddhists would say. Like, it's an enormous blessing for you to even, you got the Buddha's book in your hands in this lifetime,
Pure
bro.
Dharma.
You should
Drink it
appreciate
up.
this. Da, da, da. And before I was like, this fucking book. Like, what you want me to do? Like,
Mm,
coincidence,
mm, mm.
And so then, yeah. So then, as that string of awareness for like 10 years of practice just grows longer and longer and longer, there's just it's such a blessing to be able to catch traction, any inch of traction,
Mm.
in observing your own karma, just being able to see it, but then being able to potentially move
Steer, move.
and steer
Mm,
the opportunity that's really possible when we can be aware, be accountable for our awareness first. Just be accountable. Just be accountable for your sitting practice. Be accountable for being present when you're speaking, when you're walking. Just try doing your best. That's all.
mm,
And then through that, I find that's where a lot of the shame for me transformed a bit into more opportunities for accountability. And
mm,
accountability
mm,
isn't
mm.
always like someone tells you, hey, you hurt my feelings, you know, please apologize. Sometimes accountability is, oh, someone is saying, oh, you hurt my feelings, and blah, 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 blah. But because I'm paying attention, accountable to my awareness, I'm aware of the fact that before I said that thing that hurt their feelings, they were being a fucking dick. They were being a dick. I was reflecting back that to them, and oh, that hurts my feelings. And now they're projecting that onto me. And so accountability is sometimes not taking accountability, you know, but the attention really, truly, it's riff on Trungpa Rinpoche. He was being a cheeky little fucker when he said this. Western audience, very entertaining for them. But he goes, if you pay attention enough, you might become a genius if you're lucky, you know. And so he's sort of playing on this, at least how my own projections interacted with this, playing on this notion that ongoing awareness, ongoing attention tunes you into the genius that reality is.
Mm,
Like the truth is always there and it
mm,
is
mm,
intelligent
mm,
because it's true. And that's
mm,
not even really
mm.
like intelligence. That's
Yeah.
just what it is. And if it's what it is, then intelligence is related to our capacity to
Mm,
see what
mm,
is. So
mm.
if that's the case, then it's only attention practice. That's all this is. It'll pull you further into feeling, it'll pull you further into
Understanding.
close that
Yeah.
gap. Yeah, close that gap, you know.
Broderick, what a great and stimulating conversation, man. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being yourself and sharing your thoughts, your beautiful self, your beautiful thoughts, man. I really look forward to doing this again sometime. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Likewise, man. Likewise. Thanks for having me, dude. This is special.